I'm continuing reading from the book of Ephesians, and we're in chapter 2. We left off at verse 10, so I'm going to pick up at verse 11. It says, "Wherefore remember that you, being in past times Gentiles in the flesh." Now notice the way that Paul words this. Of course, this letter was written to the Gentiles who had believed on the Mashyach, on the Messiah, who have now been grafted in to the covenant that Yahuwah has made with the children of Yasharel. That salvation has been extended to the Gentiles as well as those that would believe of the Yahudim, of the Jews that would believe on the Mashyach. Salvation has been extended to all the nations. And it says here that you, being Gentiles in your flesh. See, if you're a Gentile and you believed on the Messiah, on the Mashyach, Yahushua HaMashiach, and you have received him, you have his spirit. You're no longer, you're the real Yahudim, as Paul wrote in Romans chapter 2. For he is a Jew, which is not one would outwardly, but that which was one inwardly, in the Ruach, in the spirit, and not of the flesh. So the real Jew, or the real Yahudi, is the one who has believed, who has covenanted with Yahuwah by the Spirit, that we are now the real Yahudi, the real Jew, if you want to use that word. We're the real Yahudim, because we have his Spirit. This is what the scripture declares in Romans chapter 2. I believe it's around verse 37, 38, 39 that Paul wrote about the real Jew being one on the inward man, and not the outward man. Now, continue reading. Paul says, for verse 11, "Wherefore remember that you, being in times past Gentiles in the flesh, who are called uncircumcision, by that which is called the circumcision in the flesh made by hands, that at that time you were without Mashyach, being aliens from the commonwealth of Yasharel, and strangers from the covenants of promise, having no hope, and without Yahuwah in the world." That's a sad place to be, with no hope, and without a covenant, without a promise from Yahuwah. That at that time you were without Mashyach. But now, verse 13 says, "But now in Yahushua HaMashiach, you who sometimes were afar off are made near by the blood of Mashyach, of Messiah." When the scripture makes reference to those that you were afar off, that's making reference, of course, to the Gentiles. When the scripture talks about those that were near, it's talking about the Yahudi, the Jews of that day, Yasharel. They were near, and the Gentiles were those that were far off. But salvation has been extended to all nations, to those that receive the Mashiach and acknowledge him with their mouth, believe in their heart that Yahuwah has raised him from the dead, and have received him as their salvation. May these words comfort you today and give you strength. Shalom.